Welcome aboard TED Talks Cruises, the podcast where wanderlust meets wisdom. Join our two hosts on a cruising adventure full of laughter, learning, and luxury. Ken Conan is a cruise rookie. He's wide-eyed, full of questions, and maybe still figuring out which end is aft. Ted Blank is a seasoned cruise expert who's been there, done that, and he even has a preferred deck chair. Each week, Ted and Ken dive into the world of cruising, from picking the right itinerary to insider tips, their personal insights, and behind-the-scenes secrets. Whether you're planning your first cruise or you're a platinum tier cruiser looking for fresh perspectives, TED Talks Cruises brings relatable stories, helpful advice, and plenty of good vibes. So get ready to laugh, learn, and set sail. No passport required.
Hey, it's Ken Conan with TED Talks Cruises. I've got our travel expert with us today, Mr. Ted Blank. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Good to be here.
Welcome back from the Great Lakes adventure with your mom and dad.
Yeah, I was on a little cruise myself. A little occupational hazard there. I know, funny how that works out. But yeah, I took a cruise on the Great Lakes, on Lake Michigan and Lake Superior, and we even got into Lake Huron with my parents. So
Wow.
very, very cool experience. So
Very
we'll
fun.
catch up on that in a future podcast. We'll
Yeah.
talk about river cruising and coastal cruising here in the United States.
I love it. I love it. Today's show, we are going to feature what I love this topic. So we're going to feature all things river cruising, kind of the ins and outs, the questions, maybe some travel hacks here and there. And of course, I am the travel rookie and our expert today, Mr. Ted Blank, will be getting all the tough questions from me.
Oh, my goodness, my goodness. Well, no, we've had a lot of folks reach out to us over the course of the time we've been doing this podcast. And so I've been kind of keeping their questions in a little file.
Oh,
and
nice.
So some of these came from our listeners. So thanks to the folks who
I love it.
sent those in. And some of them are good rookie questions. And Ken, if you come up with a question on the fly, you can always ask away too.
I'm sure that I will. I feel like I've always got
You're downplaying yourself though, because you're catching up there on river cruises. You're up to 3 now.
I know. I'm slowly catching up to your 50 plus.
Well,
now?
river cruise is probably about 20.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I'm making
and,
my way.
I like to say, folks will oftentimes ask that question: have you been on this specific ship, or have you been on this specific river cruise? And sometimes, in my case, the answer is yes. But that's not a universal answer. And part of where I think the value of a travel advisor comes in is that, not just have I been on a lot of these cruises, but I've booked a lot of them for my clients, many more than I've been on. And so part of that process is understanding how the booking unfolds, understanding the order of operations that goes into things, and using kind of hacks and techniques to make sure that we give our clients the most flexibility for the longest period of time so that we can create, the personalized and customized experience that they want.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it, not just the travel part of it, but a better question is, how many river cruises have you booked? And now that I've asked that question, I should look it up. But, it's in the hundreds. Well into the hundreds.
Yeah, I bet.
So,
I bet you're probably, and this is just me.
You might be bumping up on 1,000.
I was just going to say, this is probably me just doing some numbers, but I bet you're in the thousands.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out. That might have to get out Excel and
that's a fun
my
fact
old
to have,
abacus and add them all up. So we'll get that for a future podcast. We'll file that away.
A throwback to the abacus. I like that. Well, let's start with maybe the first step of things. So when they reach out to you, and maybe one of the first questions would be like flights. Like, what are we doing here? Is that something that I book on my own? Do you help with that? How does that work?
Yeah, so flights and questions about flights are probably about half the questions that myself and my team work with our clients on any kind of a cruise booking, but particularly river cruises, is around flights. And the questions are around the included flights, because if you're in the market for a river cruise and you've been shopping and you've probably seen some of the special offers out there, some cruise lines offer included flights or very, very heavily discounted flights.
I did not know that.
Others offer discounted flights, but they're not included kind of in the basic package. And so it depends. Every cruise line kind of handles it differently.
Okay.
And so that's a very important point, that, what one cruise line does, another cruise line might do something very differently.
Okay.
But the choice that the client makes around flights it's a very important choice, because if we decide to go with the discounted flights that are offered by the cruise line, that's great. That's probably the cheapest way to fly across the Atlantic Ocean to get to Europe.
Sure.
But the trade-off to that is that you lose most control over that booking. Meaning you oftentimes, at the price that they're offering, can't choose your flights, can't choose your airline, can't choose your routing. And oftentimes, we always have that discussion with our clients when we first begin the process. But then 18 months later, when those flight schedules become published, and that's another thing, those flight schedules are going to be available to you pretty late in the game.
Oh, interesting.
And so
okay.
once that comes around, then oftentimes, it's like the brakes get put on and we want to go back to the beginning and try to start all over again. And sometimes we can't. And so it's really, really critical that we have a good discussion about, are you okay with what they give you? And what they give you may not be your preferred airline, may not be your preferred routing.
Sure.
That ticket will have a lot of restrictions on it. So you may be able to earn frequent flyer miles, but you may not be able to take advantage of any status you might have with the airline. It's a deal, and deals never come without strings.
Yeah,
as I think we all understand that. So it's really important. And then the other option is to either we can work with our clients and book flights for them, and that's great. We love to do that because then we can help them manage that. And when the airlines decide to change a flight schedule midstream, we have the ability to help them and to support them in that. Or folks can book their own flights and just tell us what they are.
Awesome.
We can do it kind of any way.
Awesome.
A lot of folks maybe save up points and miles, or they want to book with the airline so that they're getting the maximum credit card points. That's great.
Sure.
We can accommodate all that, but that's a really important conversation to have. And a lot of people who are kind of in the market for river cruising will go onto Facebook and they'll join or watch Facebook groups about river cruising. And every time somebody says that, hey, I saw this on a Facebook group, I always want to shout out, fake news, because whenever you read those posts that people will have, they're generally not including enough information to really understand what's going on. And so that's why, as an expert in river cruising, expert in planning flights, we can help you choose the best option and manage it for you. And we can also help with, upgrades. If you want to fly in the new premium economy, which is kind of like domestic first class. If you want to travel in the comfort seating, if you want to travel in international lie flat business class, we can help make all those arrangements and make it all very seamless and put together as well. And sometimes it's great to book those flights with the cruise lines. Other times it's the worst decision ever. And so it's really important that we lay it on the line for clients when we're talking about flights. And I'll always hear this, but no. Yep. But you may have two connections.
Wow.
That may be your only option. That may be the option they give you. And to change it to something that you would consider an acceptable flight schedule might cost you more than the flights cost in the first place.
That's crazy.
So we're really, really important to have that conversation. Vote early, vote often. We have that conversation early and often with our clients as well, to make sure we kind of come into it with a good plan. And we understand how these flights with the cruise lines work. And so, you can book that river cruise. You can book the flights. You can actually pay for them. But those are cancelable later than the regular cruise.
Sure.
So sometimes it makes sense to roll the dice and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then come back and say, you know what, we can't get what we want with them. Let's go ahead and book our own flights. But other times you can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's where there's this order of operations and fine print and stuff that after you've done it, hundreds and hundreds of times, we all on my team understand how important that is to our clients and how important it is to have that conversation.
Well, I'll tell you what, the next time I book a flight, I'm going Comfort Plus.
Comfort Plus on Delta is great.
I flew over to Europe our last trip, and we flew just, what is it,
regular
economy?
We're standard economy.
Standard economy.
Yeah.
And they offered, you can tell I'm still kicking myself about this. They offered like a flash sale at the gate to upgrade for like $100 or $200. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know. I think I probably should. And then I'm like,
$200. I'm already here.
Yeah, right.
That might have avoided that curry situation that I hear about every once in a while. Because when you book standard economy tickets and you book them with the cruise lines, oftentimes you don't get to pick your seats right away.
Yeah.
And so if you're a little too far back in the airplane, you're stuck with that, honestly, that really gross vegetarian option that a lot of airlines offer.
Yeah.
And they're usually really bad. So if you can get further up in the cabin, you might be able to get some airline chicken instead of rubbery rice.
So you don't know what Ted's referring to, which you may not. My wife got stuck with the curry because we were so far in the back, they ran out of all the good stuff.
All the good stuff. Yeah.
And
I hear about it every day.
You do?
It's an office joke. You know, anytime somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to roll the dice," we'll say, "Oh, you might get stuck with the curry." So, and I like curry. I bet airline curry is actually probably not too bad because it probably masks the taste of
whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, so flight's critical part of the equation.
Love it.
And flight disruptions, flight schedule changes, all that stuff. You know, we want to talk about that because if you book the flights, you have to manage that.
Yeah.
If we book it, we can manage it. The cruise line books it. The cruise line manages it.
Right.
And so those are all parts of this decision. So it's almost as big of a decision as actually which cruise to go on.
Yeah.
I think.
I love the context and everything you put there. That's just great stuff. Let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about like pre and post cruise like there's some stays that you can do. And when we flew to was it not Vienna but
Zurich to go. Yeah, you did. That's right. You did a cruise pre-cruise tour.
Pre-cruise. Yeah. That when Shan told me about it, I was like, what are we doing? I thought we were just going to jump on the cruise ship, right? Yeah. She goes, no, we're going to do this pre-cruise thing. And I'm like, this sounds boring. It was like the total opposite. Like I had so much fun, Ted. I was like, so tell us a little bit more about pre and post, and then can you do your own thing? Like how's that all play?
Yeah. So pre and post, you know, the most river cruises are 7 days long. And, you know, I don't know about you. 7 days is a little bit too short of a time to hop over to Europe. So most people going to Europe will want to spend a little bit of time before and or after the cruise.
Absolutely.
Either in the place where the cruise starts or ends or elsewhere. And so the cruise lines and the river cruise lines, and I think they've been really working hard on this since, you know, probably before COVID, but since COVID, it's really ramped up. They've put together some excellent pre-cruise and post-cruise programs that are seamlessly integrated with the cruise. So you get to, say, Amsterdam, and the cruise line meets you at the airport, takes you to a hotel, and you'll stay on that hotel until you embark on the cruise ship. And during that time, you'll do different types of sightseeing. Sometimes your particular example, you flew into Zurich, spent 2 nights in Zurich, then went to Lucerne.
That's right.
In Switzerland, spent 2 more nights there, and then traveled and joined the ship. So there are some that are even more extensive than that. You know, the cruise ends in Basel, Switzerland, and they take you through Switzerland down to like Lake Como.
Oh my gosh.
In Italy,
no way.
Some of the cruises that go through the Moselle region will end in Luxembourg, and from there you go to the Champagne region of France.
Wow.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And then to Paris. Some of the cruises in France have really extensive programs as far afield as Barcelona. Geneva, so lots and lots of options.
That's cool.
And they're really well done. You know, they're kind of like a combination between an extension of the cruise and like a guided motor coach type tour.
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to be. They will be done either by day tours from your hotel, or you'll travel by motor coach from place to place, but they're run by the cruise line.
That's
awesome. So for a lot of folks, these are a great option. Because, you know, the cruise lines have said, okay, this is the most popular thing people want to do.
Right.
Let's do that. So they work out really, really well for that. But you asked the second question, can I do my own thing?
Yeah.
And the answer is absolutely.
Okay.
And so that's what I really love. I mean, these programs are great, and we love to, you know, explain them to clients, but I love customizing things. And so, you know, let's say your cruise leaves from Amsterdam, but you've never been to London.
Yeah.
Well, we can fly you into London, have you spend a couple days there, do some sightseeing there, you know, see the Changing Guard and Windsor Castle, maybe go to Kew Gardens, and then hop you over to Amsterdam to catch your cruise. Maybe spend a night or 2 in Amsterdam.
Wow.
And we can customize and arrange, you know, tours and activities and transportation so that it really is just as seamless as it would be if you did it with the cruise line. And I love to do that. That's like my favorite thing to do because it's so fun. And even on those tours that are put together by the cruise lines, you'll have some free time. So for example, the most common Amsterdam tour, you start out the first morning with a walking tour of Amsterdam, and then you have a free afternoon. Well, you go to the Heineken factory, a lot of things you could do. But a lot of people want to go see the Van Gogh Museum.
Sure.
So we work with some of the curators of the Van Gogh Museum,
No way.
some of the, PhD level art students in Amsterdam, and we can set up a tour of the Van Gogh Museum for you with an expert
Wow.
like that.
Wow.
And I did that, and I'll tell you, I still feel like I'm an expert in Van Gogh, but it was the most fascinating 3 hours I think I've spent in a
Really?
long time.
That's cool.
And so we can do that. And, sometimes people are going to Europe because maybe their kid is studying abroad in
Yeah.
Spain, but the river cruise is in Germany. We can help put that all together for you too, and kind of mix and match. Maybe you do the pre-cruise program, you do the cruise, you been to Switzerland, you want to do something else, we can do that.
That's great.
We have somebody traveling now who their pre-cruise program is in Poland,
Wow.
of all places.
Wow.
And so again, customized to meet their needs. So it's a fun thing to do. The answer to the question is absolutely, we can help you do anything related to that. The other one that I kind of like to pop into people's minds now is there are some of those islands in the middle of the Atlantic, like Madeira, the Azores.
Yeah.
You've maybe heard of them. They make a really nice stopover on the way to Europe. And especially in the summer, they're very easy to get to from the United States.
Really?
So you could take a river cruise, do some touring in Europe, go active, then hop over to Madeira, stay in some beautiful hotels, almost like Hawaii.
Wow.
Europe's answer to Hawaii for a couple days and pop home.
Wow.
So it's fun to do that. You go through Iceland.
Wow.
It's really neat to do that. And like I said, I kind of nerd out on that. That's like my favorite stuff to plan.
That is that's really interesting. The point about kind of popping to another European location while you're over there already. I never thought about that at all. That's just
super easy to get around, whether it's by train, by flight. A lot of places. Europe has a great train network, but it's also big.
For sure.
So if you want to go from Paris to Munich by train, even on the high-speed train, it takes like 8 hours. Well, you probably want to fly in that case. So we can help make that all seamless for you.
That's awesome.
Which is more popular? It's a mix. I'd say it's a mix. Some of the pre-cruise tours and some of the post-cruise tours sell out really early.
Okay.
And really early. And so it is important that we talk about that in the initial planning process. But doesn't mean you're locked into a decision, and it can be changed along the way as well. So something else just to keep in mind.
Awesome. That is a great overview of pre and post. Let's talk about.
And you said I actually was going to ask you now. You said your pre-cruise program in Switzerland was fantastic.
Yeah.
And what did you think? Was it, you sort of went into it with no expectations.
Yeah.
What did you walk away with? What made it so special for you?
Yeah, the hotel that they put us at was a 5-star. It was amazing. The breakfast that was included as part of our stay. I'm a foodie like you, right? And so that was amazing as well. But then the other two pieces that I really liked was I don't get real jet lagged, but it was nice to have a hotel just to kind of regroup in and know that, like, here's our spot over the next 2 days. Shannon got a little more kind of jet laggy, right? So we could work through that piece. So that was one piece that I liked. And then I also liked that we could kind of, I don't know if settle in is the right word, but get acclimated to
the time.
But also, like, Zurich was really cool.
It's a cool city.
There were some neat things to see, and we did some, like you said, we did would you call it an excursion, pre-cruise excursion or two that was really fun to kind of get your mind going. Like, okay.
Did you guys go to the Lindt chocolate factory?
So that was across the lake, and we almost did. The weather was kind of a little gnarly that afternoon.
Gotcha.
And so instead, you're going to die laughing, but instead we went over and got some really good, like, bratwurst.
Okay, well, hey,
got half a
bratwurst
chicken.
chocolate. What do you do? Hey, so you could, and they probably sell the Lindt chocolate at the grocery store too. So.
They do. So we definitely stocked up on some Lindt chocolate, and I'm a chocolate guy, and I had no idea how Lindt chocolate in Switzerland was going to taste, and I just about fell over.
They have so many different flavors too.
Yeah,
we're totally underserved by
we
Lindt.
are.
Yeah.
Right.
Note to Lindt, we would take more flavors.
We need to get in touch with those guys. Yeah, we need a little more help over here.
But it is neat, and wouldn't you hate it if you went all that way, took your river cruise, and all you saw of Zurich was the port?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
You missed the rest of the city. It's a very neat city. So
for sure, yeah there was definitely some stories about we had coffee down by the river that kind of runs through town one time, and it was on like sheep or lambskin chairs, so it was chilly outside, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? And we literally looked at this scene, and both Shannon and I are like, "Is this real? Like, this is just amazing!" And we're just hanging out, and it was the best hot chocolate she'd ever had. So that helped us.
No, that's great. So that's so many experiences you can have even before you get on the ship.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about so we're on the ship. We have excursions that are going to happen while we're on the river cruise. How do those work? Do we sign up in advance? Do I wait till I get on the ship and just get a lay of the land? Which ones are the best? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so that another very common question is about excursions and how they work. And especially if you've been on a, sort of a traditional ocean cruise
Yeah,
that has kind of that a la carte pricing model where you purchase shore excursions separately. And oftentimes those excursions will fill up.
right.
So people kind of have that mindset of this is how excursions on a river cruise work.
Yeah,
And generally it's different
yeah,
than that. First of all, either one excursion or multiple excursions in each port are included in the price. And so all you have to do is select them. On Viking in particular,
yeah.
and the other cruise lines as well, the included excursions generally will not fill up, meaning that anybody who wants to go on them can go on them. They like you to select them in advance so they can plan
Sure.
a little bit.
Sure.
Hey, we're doing a city tour at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., and noon.
Yeah.
How many motor coaches do we need at 8 versus 10 versus noon? So that's part of the reason why the cruise lines want to encourage folks to sign up in advance. But generally, those choices can be changed on board.
Yeah.
And almost every cruise line, when you get on board, the first thing that happens after the safety briefing is that they'll talk to you about the excursion.
Right.
And usually they'll walk through them. And people have questions, very specific questions about distances and stairs and how long are we going to be standing, how long are we going to be walking, and a lot of those are much better answered on board the ship because things change.
Right.
You may be going to see the same attraction, but the street's under construction, so all of a sudden you're not walking across the parking lot, you're walking a quarter of a mile to get there. So there's quite a bit of flexibility compared to an ocean cruise when it comes to those.
Yep.
Now there will be some types of specialized excursions. So on some cruise lines, those are available for purchase. On other cruise lines, those might be included,
Okay.
but they are limited in space. And so those should be signed up for in advance. And so
Got it.
after a river cruise is booked for a client, we schedule a couple different conversations with them over the course of, between now and the time that the river cruise departs.
Yeah.
And one of those will be to talk about shore excursions. And so we'll walk through the different options, help them choose. If they're not comfortable with the technology, we can make those choices
Love it.
for them. We can give them more details on them. And then we also like to talk about free time because on any port, that you stop at, there will be free time to do things on your own. And some folks love to, sleuth those things out and sniff it out and go exploring on their own. You have an unerring nose for finding a good place to have a beer and a pretzel in Germany. So that's part of it too. Just walking around and kind of enjoying.
Yeah.
So we can help folks understand the schedule a little bit too. Like how long do I have? What can I do? A lot of people have kind of quirky requests. Like, hey, I have some friends who live nearby. Can they come meet me? Yeah, you had
We
that
did
happen.
that. Yeah.
Or hey, we're going to be near this particular town. My family's from there. Can we go visit it? Well, sure. We can arrange for a car and driver to pick you up, take you out there.
Awesome.
We can help, again, personalize that onboard experience. But generally, the included excursions don't ever fill up. Sometimes the time might. So, if you really want the 8 a.m. excursion, definitely check that before you go. But there's a lot more flexibility on a river cruise than there is on an ocean cruise when it comes to excursions.
Do you have, quick follow-up to that, do you have I know it's probably personal preference, but do you have a fave or faves when you're on a river cruise that you're like, those are my faves?
It depends if I've been there before.
Yeah.
If I've been there before, I'll usually do something that's maybe the second tier excursion.
Yeah.
A lot of cruise lines have great foodie tours that I always love those. A lot of them have kind of hike or walk tours. Usually they aren't like climbing Mount Everest, but they might be a walk through the field or something like that. For example, when we went to Monet's Gardens in Giverny, you could take a motor coach there or you could walk. And it was about a 2-mile walk from the ship to the gardens. And it happened to be on an old railroad that had been turned into a bike path. So it was pretty flat.
Sweet.
A lot of cows, a lot of French cows. Very curious. They kind of would
Like,
give you a look.
What
like,
are these guys doing on the
who has
field
these
right
Americans
now?
out
Yeah.
there? But there were, we had 2 hours of a 2-mile walk, so it
Yeah.
was probably about 45-minute walk to get there. But the guide talked about Monet the whole time.
Oh my
So
gosh.
by the time I got there, I was
Awesome.
like, I'd done Van Gogh in one ear, Monet in the other ear,
Yeah.
and that was really kind of a neat
Fun.
way to do it. But if I wasn't that mobile, I could have just hopped on the motor coach and done that as
I
well.
like that.
There's a little city in Germany that you've been to called Rudesheim,
Yeah.
kind of in the Rhine Gorge region. And you can take a cable car up to the top of a mountain with a beautiful, beautiful overlook.
Yep.
And you can take the cable car down or you can actually walk down.
Yeah.
And I've done both.
Yeah.
And so that's the neat thing is even if you're on the excursion and they take you up to the top, and everybody's going to go back and get on a little shuttle to go back to the ship, you can just tell the guide, hey, we're done. We're going to walk back. And you can just walk back and take a couple hours to walk back. And as long as you don't miss the ship, you're good to go.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, let's talk a little bit about the cruise lines themselves. And do you have, and I don't know if you can tell me or not, do you have a fave? Is one of them the best? And what's your thought on that? I got a little opinion, but I haven't cruised half as much as you have, so I'd love to hear from the expert.
A lot of times people are asking that question, which is the best river cruise line? And I think what they're really asking is, which cruise line is right for me?
Yes.
And so that's where there's such a huge difference between what we do at Ted Blank Travel and what the internet does.
Yep.
And what we do is we get to know our clients. And we'll have a conversation with them about them.
Love that.
And what they like.
Love
and
that.
what they dislike and what they expect. We use the word luxury, but that can mean totally different things to different people.
Yeah.
And so then based on that, then we're going to help try to match them with the right cruise line.
Yeah.
There are cruise lines that fit into kind of the good category, the better category, the best category, but sometimes, what you think you want, you don't have to go to the best level. Maybe that's something you can do in the better level. And so that's part of the whole conversation. And there are about, a little over half a dozen different river cruise lines out there. Most of them offer essentially the same itineraries.
Yep.
So you're going to essentially go to the same place. And what it comes down to is the onboard experience, the pre and post cruise experience, the booking process and the booking rules that they have, and then the excursions and how they do the excursion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we like to talk to our clients about all of those. And as we talk about that, oftentimes they will say something and we'll say, okay, that's perfect because what you're saying is exactly what Uniworld offers, or it's exactly what Ama Waterways offers, or it's exactly what Viking Cruises offers. And so we'll take a look at them. Some people are price is an important factor. So, we can look at options that are different price points as well. But a lot of times the price differences aren't all that great.
Yeah.
And it's really taking a look at the experience and the value and making the right decision for you. So I've never been on a river cruise that I haven't liked.
Yeah.
They're all nice. They all do a great job. Some have staterooms that are fantastic. Some have staterooms that are a little small and pokey, in my opinion. But that's fine.
Yep.
That's okay. That's part of the experience. Some do really unique, very bespoke type shore excursions. Other ones do a little more of the, follow the flag type of a tour. But if you've never been someplace, that follow the flag tour can be a great way to get your first experience.
I agree.
The type of people who travel on the cruise lines are a little bit different as well. And so that can make a big difference. So I never like to answer the question, what's your favorite river cruise line? Because none of them do a bad job. But as we discuss it, we're going to kind of talk about, let's talk about excursions. Mm-hmm. Are you okay with having just one choice?
Right.
Or would you prefer to have more choices? Or would you prefer to have something that's really special and unique and kind of privileged access and a boutique bespoke style of touring? So that's how we kind of help our clients make the decision, because ultimately it's not my vacation.
Yeah,
it's your vacation. It's everyone else. Now you've been on at least 3 different river cruise lines, and you can tell that they're different.
Yeah,
I mean, based on your experience, they may not look different from the outside. But they're very different.
They are. I will tell you, when Shannon and I went to Vienna. Mm-hmm. And it's called an ASTA conference.
So ASTA is the American Society of Travel Advisors. It's our professional conference, and actually every river cruise line brings their ships there.
Yeah.
So we've been on all of them.
Yeah.
On every cruise line. But you had a chance to travel before and after.
Yeah.
Too.
That, what you just said, all the ships were there.
They'll look the same.
That was amazing because you look at them, they're like, oh,
Huh,
they're all kind of low profile,
Yeah.
long ships. They look gorgeous. all
Some
of
are
them.
white, some are blue, so
That's
there's
right.
a little difference there.
That's right.
Some have a little pointier bow, some have a little squarer bow, but
Yep.
yeah, you'd never know the difference from the outside.
Yeah. But to your point, you guys being the experts and actually listening to your clients, understanding what they're looking for, and knowing that, oh, this ship has a little bit different look and feel to the cabin because they offset the bed a little bit. And the doors open all the way out. There's no balcony. But you know what? For you, Ken, this is me talking. I love that.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the balcony piece because it took up part of my room, and I'm kind of a big guy, and I want all the room I can get.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I just think that is very well put by you. Like, we listen and then we put you in the right spot.
Mhm.
It's kind of a simple, like,
It sounds
of
simple. But
course,
it's
of course you should do that.
It's simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
And
Exactly.
So, and I think with a lot of, with almost every one of our clients, even folks who've been on a few river cruises, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep. That's
So
right.
that's the
right.
advantage of having
That's
an
right.
expert travel advisor help you understand, hey, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to ask this question because I want to make sure we kind of cover all of our
Yeah.
bases.
I love it. I love it. All right, I got a couple rapid fire ones here. As far as kind of in port, like, how long are we in port? Is it all day? Does the ship stay overnight? Am I going to have free time? And you talked about this a little bit, but maybe dive into that piece just a bit more.
Yeah, so most of the time the ship stays in port for 6 to 8 hours.
Okay.
Sometimes the ship will actually stay overnight. A lot of river cruises that go to Budapest and Vienna will stay docked overnight. And so you can actually get on and off in the evening. And in Vienna, that's great because you can go to a concert in the evening. Some will be shorter stops. Sometimes they're only 3 or 4 hours. And once in a blue moon, the ship stops someplace literally just to dock.
Yeah.
And you'll travel out by motor coach.
Yes.
And so the dock is just the dock. So the places you're going are a little bit further. So it can vary depending on the cruise and depending on the city. But in general, most of the time, the river cruise ship will dock in the heart of the town. You can get off, you can walk around, and everything that you want to see is kind of right there. And you'll be in port for some of the day or most of the day or overnight. Most of the shore excursions are 2 to 2.5 hours if you're staying within the port. If you're going a little further afield, they might be a little bit longer.
Sure.
An example of that would be Salzburg in Austria.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Sound of Music.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a full day.
Hills are alive.
So the ship docks in a little town called Linz.
Yep.
And you can stay in Linz if you want to.
Yeah.
But you can also go to Salzburg for the day, and it's about 2 hours each way by motor coach. So it's a full day trip. So there'll be a lot of different options. But regardless of what you do, you'll generally have free time either right by the ship or wherever you're, like in Salzburg, wherever you're going, to explore on your own. So the tour will have a guided component and a free time component. Now, you can skip the tour entirely if you want to.
Right.
And just do your own thing completely. Most of the cruise lines also have bicycles. So if you just want to go for a bike ride, you can do that. I mean, a lot that you can do that isn't organized. But if you do the excursion and then have some free time, your day is usually pretty full. And keep in mind, you're doing this almost every day.
Right.
There aren't very many sea days on river cruise.
Right.
You're in port almost every day. Sometimes you might have an afternoon of scenic cruising or something like that.
Yep.
But it's a pretty busy vacation.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we were in, I forget the town we were in, but we had done a couple river cruises on either side of our Vienna stay with the Asta, and we doubled up a port. And so instead of doing kind of the excursions that we were like, oh, we kind of did those already, we had bikes that we asked. We said, hey, can we borrow your, and they're like, yeah, we'll get.
Totally.
One of the first mates brought it down, made sure it was all set up, tires good and everything. And it was an e-bike too. And so we went on this
huge, go for a long ways.
Huge ride.
Yeah.
And it was, of course, we had to stop at a little beer stand along the way because that's what you do. And it was just gorgeous. And it had that feel of like you're almost living there because you were out with everybody else.
No tourists
biking,
around.
No tourists around.
You left the tourists behind.
It was fun.
And that's, I think, that Europe, the river cruise, it can be everybody who goes on the cruise is going to have a different vacation.
Yeah.
Is really what it comes down to. All those, anywhere from 100 to 200 passengers, they're going to have a very different experience depending on what their interests are and what they enjoy doing.
I love
and that's
that.
cool.
Awesome. All right. So this was a question that I wish I would have asked before I went on my first cruise. Is there a dress code? Because when I went, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to bring slacks, dress shoes, a dinner jacket, I need to like almost have a full suit for some of my dinners. So talk to us about that piece, and it certainly took up a lot of room in my bag. And then I was like, wait a minute, not everybody's dressed like me. What's going on here? I thought so tell us about the dress code.
Yeah, generally there is no dress code on river cruise ships. In the evening, they ask that gentlemen wear a nice pair of slacks and a button shirt. A polo shirt and Dockers is fine.
Yep.
I will always say, and the equivalent for the ladies, which is 100% the wrong thing to say because they want more specificity
for sure
than that. So,
come on, Ted.
Let's ladies, you can wear a nice, just something. You don't have to get real dressed up.
Right.
You don't need a black cocktail dress. You don't need a ball gown.
Yeah.
Slacks and a shirt. You might wear a skirt of some sort. Everything you do, you kind of want to be able to mix and match a little bit. So some men will bring a jacket because one night they'll wear a jacket over their shirt, and the next night they'll just wear the shirt by themselves. But yeah, there's really no dress code on the ships themselves. If you dine ashore in Europe and you go to a nicer restaurant like a Michelin star restaurant, the Europeans tend to dress up a little more than we do, so you might plan accordingly for that. But on board the ships, they're pretty casual.
Okay.
Folks during the day will wear shorts, whatever's comfortable for you on excursions. Good pair of shoes that's broken in. So that's what people tend to wear. Some of the river cruise ships have pools, so you can put on your bathing suit and go to the pool.
Yeah.
It's not like a Downton Abbey type experience. Pretty casual experience.
That's awesome.
Bring things that are comfortable, and nobody's going to judge you if you wear the same shirt to dinner 2 nights of the cruise.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think you had a nugget in there that I'm going to call out: shoes that are broken in.
Oh yeah.
We had somebody on our last cruise that was like, I just got these shoes. And I'm thinking, oh, sweet. Those
mistake.
Look great. And then that night, they're like, I just got these. And that blister on my foot.
I'm bleeding in the butt. They look nice, but I'm bleeding.
Right. Not good. Last question for our river cruises and nuggets around those. Are children allowed on board ships? These are cruise ships that do the river cruises.
It varies by cruise lines whether they specifically do not allow children or whether they will accept children by request.
Okay.
But I've never seen a child on a river cruise.
Yeah.
It is extremely unusual. It would not be a good vacation for most children.
Yeah.
Now, Disney has a division called Adventures by Disney.
Okay.
Where they will charter river cruise ships, but they completely do different activities on board the ships that are geared towards families and children.
Oh, okay.
And so the standard river cruise, the one that our clients are going on, there will be no children on there, whether it's a formal written policy, no one under 18, or whether it's just the way it is.
Sure.
Now the corollary to that is everyone going to be in their 80s? And the answer to that is also no.
No.
I would say the average river cruiser is between 60 and 70 years old. It's gotten younger over the years as I've taken river cruises.
Okay.
So there are a lot of people in their 50s who will take river cruises, people who are still working. They kind of used to be the preserve of the retired.
Sure.
But now a lot of people who are working will take river cruises. It helps to have mobility, but there are experiences that are available for folks who really don't have too much mobility within the confines of what you can do in Europe.
Sure.
And so Europe is just not as accessible of a destination as the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Cobblestone streets.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of buildings don't have handicapped ramps to them. So folks in a wheelchair, that's a whole different equation. That's a little bit tough. And there's always walking. There will be walking. I would expect that even people who are doing the most gentle walking tours may end up walking almost a mile each day. Now, it might be split up into a couple different times, but even just when you get off the ship and you might have to walk a block to get on your motor coach. And then the motor coach gets to the city center and you walk a couple blocks to see a couple things and go to the cathedral. So, for folks who are super, super mobility impaired, it is really important for us to have that conversation about steps, stairs and steps and things like that. But for folks who generally are, mobile enough to get around on their own, no concerns.
Yeah.
There will be walking tours that are focused on people who like to walk a little slower.
Yep.
And then there are tours focused on folks who like to walk really fast.
Yeah.
So a lot of different options for different levels of fitness and activity as well.
We were on our first, this is so fun, on our first cruise, and we made some friends on the boat, right? Like you do. And they were they're pretty athletic. They were runners and everything else. And so they got on, I think they called it the fast walkers, right? Is that
fast
right?
walkers.
Fast walkers.
They all call them something slightly different.
And so the fast walkers were doing this hike, and it was it might have been Rudesheim, and they went up. We're in the we're just
here in the gondola,
like,
hello,
hey, how's it going? And they didn't just go up, like they huffed it, like they went. So they told us later, like, wow, that was kind of a workout.
Yeah. Well, and especially in Switzerland, I think for the average Swiss person, climbing to the tops of the Alps, they would consider that to be a gentle walk.
Right.
So it's important to, especially if you have
Oh,
concerns about mobility, talk to us.
Yeah.
And listen to what the cruise manager says, because sometimes there's a cultural barrier between kind of the standard operating procedure in Europe and what we might think would be accessible.
For sure.
Yeah. And again, folks, we've had folks of all mobility levels go on cruises, and everybody comes back raving about it. So
yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, Ted, thank you for joining us as always on
we out of time
TED
already?
Talks. Well, we're getting there. I mean, what are we? 40
minutes
in?
Yeah, I guess we are.
Time flies when we're having fun talking river cruises.
I
mean, it's so fun to have had a couple under my belt now where I can like actually add a little bit of flavor, and it's fun to think back to those times because it's just so fun. Those river cruises
we got to
great.
get another one on the books for you. I've got one coming up this fall. I'm going to be going to a new place for me, actually.
Where you going?
The Southern Danube. So instead of going from Munich to Vienna, we're going to get on in Vienna and go all the way down to Bucharest in Romania.
Wow.
So we're going to go it's kind of the former Yugoslavia, Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria. So
that's crazy.
I'm excited. I'll for sure report back.
That's awesome. So is Budapest, is that like your halfway point?
Actually, Budapest is the start. The pre-cruise is in Vienna. Then we hop down to Budapest to get on the ship.
Wow. So I am envious of you going to Budapest. We were there in our last cruise, and I had so much fun. I wanted to stay there another day or two because I was just like, there's just so much to do here. We didn't get into a bath either.
So underrated, I would say. Such an underrated city, and I think so cool.
I'd agree. You'll laugh. My screensaver right now is it Parliament that they light up at night?
Oh, yes, the one that kind of looks like the U.S. Capitol.
Yes.
Like British Parliament meets the U.S. Capitol. Beautiful building.
Amazing.
Beautiful city.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, again, thanks for joining us on TED Talks Cruises. I'm Ken Conan. This is Ted Blank, our expert. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to hit the like and share button down below. Podcasts coming at you every week. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks again.